The year is 1957. Elvis Presley's Jailhouse Rock debuts for the first time. The final episode of I Love Lucy airs. And most of all, the birth of the space race.
1, 0, all engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
During the Cold War, the Soviet Union makes the decision that if they were to win this war, they would need serious technology, especially since the US is close in their tracks, and would soon catch up with them as far as technology goes. So, the Soviet Union changes history as we know it and launches the very first satellite into orbit. It was this little guy, and his name was Sputnik, but he was only the size of a beach ball, approximately, and weighed a little less than the average man. This little guy took only 98 minutes to orbit around the Earth completely, and because of this, it dragged a lot of attention to the Soviet Union, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. Speaking of bad things, this meant that America was now officially the silver medal to the world with technology, and the fact that this metal beach ball was in space meant that it was a possibility that the Soviets could use it to send over nuclear missiles to the US. Not good. So America sucked it up and decided enough was enough and started scrambling for everything it had and decided to make their own satellite, the Explorer 1. This is America's first satellite, and it looked uncanny to a pencil. Well, that's what I thought at least. Anyway, the satellite wasn't as successful as the Sputnik, and because of this, the space race was born. From the get-go, it was apparent to the US that the Soviets had a ginormous lead ahead of them, and showed no sign of slowing down. And just for the sake of taking up space, that's funny, I will list most of the Soviets' aerospace accomplishments. First living thing in space, Laika the dog. First man in space, Yuri Gagarin. First woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. First 3 men in space. First spacecraft to impact the moon, Luna 2. First spacecraft to impact Venus, Venera 2. And that's only a fraction of the stuff that they accomplished. Trust me. I'm writing this script right now and I just realized how many steps they've made. So you can imagine how the US felt about this. Yeah, not good! Russia put a dog into space before America could put a freaking man on the moon! A dog! Not even a cute dog. Seriously, Russia. Gosh! I apologize for that. Pull yourself together. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the US didn't accomplish anything, too. America launched the first successful solar-powered satellite, the Vanguard 1, and the US also got the first photograph of the Earth from the moon, thanks to the Explorer 5. There are many others, but we'll not go into all of them, but those are just a couple. On July 29, 1958, the US, in an attempt to intercept the Soviets, created the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA for short. This would encourage the ambitions of space exploration in the US. And after a while, America had this revolutionary idea to send a man to the moon. This event would single-handedly change history as we know it. President John F. Kennedy proposed to U.S. Congress that in order to win the space race, we would have to send a man to the moon, and to do so by the end of the 1960s. So, the U.S. went with this crazy idea and started preparations and building of a new, shiny rocket. The first attempt at this wasn't all that successful. Spacecraft Saturn IB and the crew of Apollo 1 was the first manned mission NASA hosted, but ended in a deadly cabin fire in the cockpit, killing 3 men. Luckily, the US was not discouraged and in short time was actually catching back up to the Soviets because of their several successful Apollo missions. Apollo 8 and Apollo 10 were 2 very successful missions that tested the spacecraft's capabilities. And then, at long last, Apollo 11 was approaching. And after years and years of preparations and missions, on July 16, 1969, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins took flight and were on their way to the moon, 238,900 miles away. It would be a 3-day trip to get there, and when they did get there on July 19th, They would land on the moon, and Neil Armstrong would go down in history as the first man to step on the moon's surface. Oh yeah, and Buzz Aldrin was the second. Oh yeah, and then there's Michael Collins. No one really cares about Michael. Kind of sad, really. This day would mark several other Apollo missions afterwards that would be rather successful, besides Tom Hanks' mission in Apollo 13. Wait, did I say Tom Hanks? Yeah, must have. Eventually, in 1972, the space race ended, and in 1975, a program with the Soviets and the US joined up to launch 2 orbital spacecrafts that could join together, one from the Soviets and one from the US. Both of the crews joined together and exchanged gifts on the spacecraft.